Harmonics, like in music, is matching cycles, matching sounds. And by harmonics, I mean harmonics that move through the material world that allow individuals to match up and and have offspring or match up to do anything. There's harmonic cycles through deterministic materialism. Human procreation and procreation in general is based on human harmonics. You're harmonically tuned in to somebody of the opposite sex, quite often the procreators are. And a harmony, a coincident, a matching spermatozoa with ovum at the appropriate time is a harmony that allows for offspring to occur. And so the idea that, the psychology doesn't follow these harmonics and that everything is logically bound, that one should always place their reasonability before the harmonics of their life, is a contention of the rational to be rational, to categorize reasonability in their own psyche and apply it at a particular time, such as to use contraception. But if one is hearkening to the natural harmonics of their life, oftentimes they end up with a pregnancy that is not a breach of this natural cycle. Every impulse, sexual impulse, is part of this harmonic need or desire. We come from a lineage, and that lineage echoes through us. And if at the right time you don't disrupt the harmonics of that lineage, then you are susceptible to develop offspring. And I think that that is a fine thing and an example of a good thing. I say that when idealism is broken, we tend to develop narratives, self-narratives, to compensate for that broken idealism. And I contend that the majority of Amendam's vantage point of the world as either bad or less bad, never mentioning good, the goodness, the bright side, the light side of life. He plays in jest of being lighthearted, but his idealism is broken, and so his philosophy then compensates for this broken idealism in his life through seeing the lens of the downtrodden and the broken and the meager and the meek. And there's something to be said about the man that sees the world in a negative light. I'm not trying to suggest that it's wrong to see the world that way, but that it's but a personal narrative that an individual takes on. And to get caught up in the wake of somebody else's narrative who looks at everything so it was such a blight is a difficult whirlpool, wake, vortex to get caught within. And sometimes it brings you down further than you would have naturally gone on your own. And that's a criticism against Amendam's determination to draw more people to his philosophy is it's dragging a lot of people into witnessing the world, even their world, in a negative light when their natural tendency and buoyancy and personal perception of the world is not necessarily so bad. See, truism is like any other ism. It's logocentric, and it's about losing the magnetism to something. It's kind of like marching around a campfire and everybody getting in a big circle and then pointing at the campfire and saying truth, 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 and everybody chanting in unison about this, and then after a while things kind of die down and you need to take a piss, so you stand up and you walk away from this circle of beings around a fire all chanting at it, and you walk off into the periphery, into the darkness, and there you take your piss, you breathe deep, you stare at the stars, and you turn around and there's somebody else there, and they're making fun of the group chanting around the fire, right? They're just making fun, and you're laughing, you're going along with it, you think it's pretty funny. And that's the difference between truth being the fire and truism, which is kind of the second thought about the group that's magnetized to the fire, that's indefinitely magnetized to it, pointing at it, chanting at it, you know. And everybody that walks away from the fire doesn't necessarily turn around and realize that the group is forming a truism around that truth. But this is my point with in Mendham. It's Mendhamism. It's stepping away from the reiterative chant about what he's saying. One example of an Amendam truism is the idea that there is only badness and less badness, and that the idea of goodness is the alleviation of badness. This precludes the idea that one could rub their finger, rub their hand, and feel a sensation on their hand just rubbing their fingers together, and that sensation is a good sensation, and it's not because there was a need to rub my hand. My hand is just fine as it is without rubbing, but rubbing it more causes a greater sensation, a better sensation, a good sensation. Same thing with amusement parks. I mean, amusement parks are in business because you're amused. Now, my body nor my ego has any need to get on and enjoy a roller coaster, but when I get on a roller coaster, I generally enjoy myself. I am in a heightened state, greater ecstasy. I'm in a good, positive state. And it's not because I was deprived a roller coaster ride beforehand. So anyway, that's an idea of a truism, something that Amendam wants to state as true and point to and keep reiterating, but when you step back and you think about it, you can think of the world with good and bad states, but definitely good states, neutral states, and even if the arrow points from bad to alleviation of bad, it doesn't exclude there being a positive. I mean, solar panels are a good thing. They're positive based on the information that we know about carbon emissions in cars, and trying to gather energy from the sun. They're objectively a good thing. They're engineered precisely, so just the building of them is a positive thing. And one could say, Amendam's response to that would be, well, its carbon emissions are bad, so solar panels are less bad, but they're not good. They're just less bad, so we call that good. Well, this is where, and yet the valuations that other individuals make don't see the world in terms of bad and less bad, but in terms of bad, neutral, and good. So with that, let me go ahead and start with the idea of granting over Amendam's argument fully to Amendam. If you are a witness of Amendam's videos over a period of time, you'll gather his arguments, positions, and the premises in which he's using to make his arguments. And so what I suggest is granting over his argument fully to himself as a contained logical apparatus that has been built and has been argued. Each premises has been argued. And what I suggest doing is, after granting over his position to him, then outline the position, kind of grant it a cookie cutter status, and then step back from his argumentation and, take in a new breath and take a look at the method of argumentation and take a look at the premises he's using from which his arguments stem, and see if you can find an exception to any of the premises or the route in which his argument's taking place. So what I'm doing in this argument is I'm creating a subtext to go around Amendam's cookie cutter argument, kind of like an undertow to rub up against it, kind of to see whether or not there's any seepage or any considerations of seepage that we should be aware of. Yeah, the imposition argument is dead based on the very idea that you have to first be in order to be imposed upon. You cannot impose upon a non-existent. And so you hear the antinatalist argument that procreation is the imposition, that the very coming forth of your being is considered an imposition upon your being. The mere fact that one sees that is either a delusion where one does not see the environment that they're born into as being that which would impose upon them, where they're not seeing a difference between life in general and life as it relates to the individual self. The imposition argument, you have to have something present in order to impose upon it. So you'll find that Gary's reaction to this is like, no, you're generating a human. You're imposing that human. And I say, no, it's more like you're causing a human. You're not imposing a human, because the imposition would be a negative connotative value. And it's not to say that it's not an abstract of the word, it's that the word imposition is like the word parasite. It by itself has a negative connotation. It's not saying that the abstract of imposition as a word is negative because the word itself is negative. Like saying the word imposition isn't negative because the connotation of the word is negative. You can say, when I say the imposition argument is dead, I'm not saying that I'm denying the future at all. I'm simply saying that the word imposition should be changed to something like importation, an importing from nowhere to being here. And the reason I say importation as opposed to imposition is because imposition is negatively, it has a connotative negative value right out of the gate. And so the antinatalist starts out with the idea that humans and sentient beings, but mostly humans, are cancerous. And from then on out, all these negative connotative values right out of the gate lead the antinatalist on a downward slope. Luddite Returns, Graytex, Hothliday, myself. I'm sure there's a few others who have argued in the pro-natalist camp. What does it mean to say that suffering sucks? Is this like a natural expression of saying ouch when you get cut or stung? Is it a yelp? These seem like natural expressions to pain. But the idea of pain and suffering, we want to make certain that pain is, for the most part, when we're talking about it, in the category of suffering. But does it suck? I ask this because the initial text, the initial thought is that it does, because your initial instinct is to push away from an experience that is quote-unquote negative. But if one develops chronic pain, chronic suffering, their psychology develops a subtext. Now, I say this based on not only my own personal experience, but upon interviewing people who are in wheelchairs and people who have gone through traumatic events. When I ask them, does suffering suck, they don't deny that suffering sucks, but it's the subtext, it's the next things that they say about it that say suffering it's a matter of course. It's what happens when bad things are happening to you. Or watching somebody acquire a taste for coffee, or for people who are cutters, who cut themselves. Sometimes they can romance the pain. Sometimes they even see it as a release, something sensitively positive. So that when they're engaged in painful activity, they're sensing it now no longer as something they want away, but something they want as present. So you could say, because they want it present, that it is a good, because it's no longer that which is being pushed away. So as far as the idea, does suffering suck? Granted, over the first step, the exhale, is yes. But the next step, the inhale, which is part of human's experience, can be to romance and acquire a taste for the pain, or if not a taste, at least an acceptance. There is a neutral area where one will say, I'll never enjoy this scenario, I'll never get anything from it. But you can get something from it. You can get something from chronic pain. If it does not kill you, it only makes you stronger. Now that line, Amendam really warred with that, because he's like, things that are crippling to you do not make you stronger, they make you weaker. And once again, grant over that to him. Grant over that on the exhale, but on the inhale, on the step back, on the reconsideration, on the subtext, find out how you've grown through your challenges, through your agonies, things that you could not have possibly seen otherwise had you not gone through these particular events, do make you stronger. They make your character stronger, and they make your insight, foresight, your general sense of what's possible in the universe
greater than had you never gone through that experience at all. Some people that go through great suffering find that they just put it into a matter of course or is category, and they do it because they've accepted it. It is the case. And granted, it is their secondary thoughts on the matter, and they might not invite any more of it to be in their life. But at that point where one has acquired this subtext, this acceptance of their pain, at this point, does suffering still suck? And my initial response is yes. And the secondary response is no, it no longer sucks. It just is. And that,
When you experience chronic pain, your baseline changes. And that baseline tells you that you, from then on, are not going to suffer pain. And you're going to do it continually. This change in the baseline changes the text. It creates the new text that is your new reality, that modifies what you previously thought. Now, as you raise the value of pain and you try to make it your new normal, your new baseline, mentally, there is a convergence between what you used to think was good feeling, and the fact that you'll never quite feel that way again. So you'll recognize the loss on one end. On the other end, you'll recognize a new tolerance. So you will develop a duplicity of thinking, and which is a attribute of our thinking. It's not a deficit of our thinking to think with duplicity. See, Amendam is he's like a leaf on a tree whom is bitter that it's not a fruit. Or not bitter that it's not a fruit, but despises the fruit on the tree. It's a leaf because the leaf will bloom, take in its sunlight, play with the chloroplasts, and then fade and die. Where the fruit and the seed has purpose and longevity and extensionability to it. It has an ateleologic form that one might want to consider when one is considering the harmonies of their life and how many they've disrupted and how many they've gone forward with. Delusion is a type of phenomena. It's a type of phenomena that we live through. And I mean this generally. And it's as if we create a narrative, and that particular narrative is it takes the form of truth because it has pointed edges, because it points to something. But it's still a personal narrative. Now, phenomena is delusion as being a type of phenomena, and phenomena being a branch of philosophy, phenomenology. It's seated so nicely in there that part of our very being, part of philosophy, is the phenomena. It is the delusion.